Welcome, welcome. It is time for math. This is now going to be lesson 1.6, and we're going to talk about volume again today. So, not the volume like your radio. We talked about that yesterday. Volume is when you measure a three-dimensional object. You're going to measure a couple of those today. We're going to use one that I'm going to use. If you want to do this, play along with me, that's fine. What you're going to need is you're going to need this is called a rectangular prism. Basically, it's a box. Something you can fit stuff in. It's called a rectangular prism because every side is a rectangle. Every single side is a rectangle. Rectangular prisms are awesome because it's kind of like a cube minus one of the sides. You can fit things in it. So think of a tissue box. You can use a tissue box. Cereal box. You can use one of those. I have a little drink pouches, so I just use one of those boxes to make it small and easy. So the first thing we're going to talk about is when you're measuring volume, there are two different ways to measure volume. So I know we've talked a lot about how to measure area. Volume is not as easy. The reason why is because with volume, you have to actually multiply three numbers together because it's a three-dimensional object. So you're measuring length, width, and height. So there are two formulas. You can either do length times width times height. That means I'm going to measure the length, I'm going to measure width, and I'm going to measure height. Or you can do base times height. And we're going to talk about that in just a moment, okay? For today, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about measuring this little area, this little box right here. And I'm going to do it using the base times height method. So the first thing you're going to do is in your math journal, page 15, that's the page that we're working on, it says, our prism has a volume of blank square pattern blocks. So what I did is I got all of my little square pattern blocks out. You don't have these at home. So just pay attention. It's fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my square pattern blocks and I'm going to put them in my container. And I'm going to stand up so I can see. Notice how much empty space there is between these pattern blocks. Notice how close they fit to one another. Notice how good they fit next to each other. Why do you think that is? You should be thinking. There is a question here in a minute that you're going to have to answer that basically answers that same exact question. Why do you think these squares fit so closely together? Now, this isn't perfect. If you look right here at the very top, there is a little tiny ledge, and I'm going to move it up. There's a little tiny ledge that's not filled in. So keep that in mind. Now, besides that, it is. So what you're going to do is you're now going to count how many square pieces fit as my base. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Now, when I look at this, I could also find the area of the bottom. So finding the area of the bottom, my bottom rectangle is 3 pieces by 5 pieces. So this is called your base. So it's called the base because it's like the foundation that everything else is going to sit on. So my base for this picture is going to be 15 cubes or 15 squares. Okay? So keep that in mind. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use those same squares and I'm going to measure how tall it is. So I'm going to put them just one at a time. I don't have enough squares to put the whole thing full. So since I don't have that many squares, what I'm going to do is I'm going to literally put it as in one, well, if I can do it right. Put it in one little stack. I'm going to stack it as nice and neat as I can the whole way up. And then we're going to count how many pieces it is tall. Okay, so I'm going to show you really quickly. Right now, you can see that it almost touches the top. Not quite, but almost. If I put another piece in there, it goes over that top ledge. Do you see that? So I can't count that piece. These are the pieces that I can count. So how many pieces high is this box? Count them. I'll go slow with you. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So 14 pieces high. Great. So now we can use our area or our volume model to figure this out. So we can either do 3 times 5 times 14, or we can do 15 times 14. Basically what I did is I did this first, because we know that length times width is area, and that's what your base is. Okay, so that's a little hint. So you're going to now multiply 15 times 14. I know this is hard for some of you, so I'm going to review it with you. 15 times 14. The way you do this problem is you start with your ones column. I'm going to pretend like this 1 isn't here. 4 times 5 is 20. Carry my 2. 4 times 1 is 4. Plus 2 is 6. I call it X's and O's, and I usually sing the song, X's and the O's, they haunt me. That reminds me to put my stuff out and put my zeros. That is a placeholder. Okay, we'll talk about this later on when we do the actual multiplication lesson, but you have to put that in there, okay? And now I'm going to multiply this. 1 times 5 is 5. 1 times 1 is 1, and I'm going to add it together. 0, 11, and 2. So this container has a volume of 210 square pieces. So on my paper, our prism has a volume of about 210 square pieces. Now, it says about. Remember when I talked about that extra space that was showing up and how it had a little tiny line of extra space at the top, and then I couldn't put that last one in because it was halfway over? It wasn't filled completely. If I were to take water, I could fill it all the way to the tip-top edge and it would fill every little bit of it. But these squares aren't perfect. So there's going to be little air spaces and air pockets. So that's why we say it's about that much. Okay? All right. Time for the next one. All right. We have a triangle pattern blocks. Here we go. Triangle pattern blocks. Now, mind you, a triangle might not fit perfect. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to fit as many of these triangles in here as possible. All right. So I am going to do this really quickly. So I hope I have enough out. Let me see what we can do. I'm trying to make sure there's like touching and as close together as possible. Now, notice that there's no way I can fit another triangle right there on the end or right here on this end because it's not small enough. So we just have to make do. We're going to try to smush them in as good as we can. All right, I'm going to pause it and I'm going to come right back after I have them done. Give me just a second. All right, so if you look at my picture now, 29 hours later, you can see that there are actually 31 triangles on my base. Now, this is going to be a little trickier. I can't necessarily do base times or length times width on this one because the length on some of the lines are different than some of the other ones. Also, notice there's a lot of empty spaces. I smushed them as close as I could, but I couldn't fit any more triangles in there without pushing others up. So again, there are 31 triangles. 31 triangles on my base. So we're going to do base times height. 31 triangles on my base. And now I need to figure out my height. So I already measured the height. The height is actually the same because these pieces are the same size as the other as the squares. So my height is going to be 14. So now we're going to multiply 31 times 14. All right, 4 times 1 is 4. 4 times 3 is 12. X's and the O's, they haunt me. 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times 3 is 3. And then I'm going to add 4 plus 0 is 4. 2 plus 1 is 3. 1 plus 3 is 4. So 434. That's a lot of little triangle pieces that I don't have. 434. So about 434. All right. And now it's time for the hexagon pieces. Now, again, pay attention to these triangles. Notice the empty spaces. Think about that. What does that mean? Is that a clear way to measure it? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to have the hexagon pieces up here for you instead of you watching me do it. And then I will go through the answers in just a moment. Give me just a second. All right, I am back. 4 hours later this time. I'm just kidding. This one was a little bit easier because only 4 pieces fit. But look at those giant spaces that are now empty. Look at those giant spaces. So what we did is 4, and again, this is the same distance, their height as the other pieces. So there are 14 that fit across. So 4 times 14. What I want you to do is I want to see if you can do that multiplication. This is 1 digit times 2 digits. So if you set it up, 14 times 4. I want to see if you can answer that question. So on the Google Slides that you're going to have, it's going to ask you about the volume of a square, of the hexagon, and you're going to have to write that answer in. Okay? So I will have that available for you to type in or write in on the assignment. So that's going to go here. So now let's talk about this. What was important to remember when using when you pack the prisms with the pattern blocks? So you could measure volume as accurately as possible. Did I just shove a whole bunch of them in and be like, okay, that's about fit. That's fine. Is that accurate? What you need to think about is when you're measuring volume, you need as little space, as little extra empty space as possible. You need to pack things as close together as possible. Okay, so that's what you need to remember. What is important to remember in order to get the most accurate information as possible? You need to pack the pieces close together to have the least amount of empty space. That's what you're going to write. Basically, that means, like right now, if I look at my hexagons, there's a whole bunch of empty little dots here. That's not an accurate way to measure. Empty space, empty space. Now, if we go back to what the squares looked like, there was very little extra space between them. It fit perfect. There was a little tiny line at the top and then a little tiny line just along the side, and that was it. The rest was filled in. Now, this is important because if I want to measure how much liquid can go into it, or if I want to measure how much sand I need for a sandbox, I need to know how much would fit into it, right? So if I go to the store and I say, I need sand to fill this box, and I give them the measurement of the hexagon with all those extra spaces, my box will only be about half full. But if I give them the measurement of all of those square pattern blocks, my box will be full to the brim. Why? Think about that. Why do you think that works? That goes into the next questions. So it says, which pattern block do you think you need the most to fill your prism and why? We needed the triangles. And it says why, so we need to be specific. Why did I need more triangles than I did hexagons or squares? Why would I need more triangles? Pause if you need to. Think about it. Why would I need more triangles? The triangles are smaller, so they take up less space. Okay, which one did I need the least of? You should have done your multiplication by now. So if you have done your multiplication, I'm not writing my answer on here. If you've done your multiplication by now, you should know that the hexagons you need the least amount of. They are bigger and take up more space. Also, they leave more empty space. Keep that in mind. Now, what else could I use to fill this up? I mean, I used something on the lesson yesterday. I used bubble gum. Talked about sand. Could I use sand? Could I use marbles? Could I use water? It doesn't matter what you use. As long as it's smaller than a container, you can use it to fill it up. Now, if you want, you can go ahead and list a couple of things on here. I'm going to put sand, marbles, gum, maybe beans. Like if you have the dried beans at home, sometimes people use those. You can use anything to fill it up. Now, this question is the important question. Which item is easiest to pack in this? To leave the least amount of space. Which one is the easiest to pack tightly without gaps or overlaps? So think about the triangles. There are a lot of gaps. Think about the hexagons. A lot of gaps. Think about the squares. Why do you think that is? This is also going to be a question that you're going to have to answer. So you're going to have to answer this part right here and this part right here. So which one do you think is going to be easiest and why? The important part I want you to focus on is why. Why do you think it's more accurate if I use the square than if I were to use a triangle or a hexagon? That picture right there should help you and should give you a hint. Why is it easier and better to use a square? That's part of your answer. Than it is to use the other things. So that's going to be on your assignment. We're going to review that tomorrow when we do part of our lesson. All right. So on this page, I'm going to post those two questions for you. You need to answer them. Make sure that you get them done as part of your Google Slides. We're going to do this next page a little bit together. So we've talked about areas of a rectangle, and the good thing is this time it gives us pictures. And I'm a picture person. I told you that. You all know this. So because it gives us pictures, I'm going to use that to help me. Okay? So number one, find the area of the square. So I'm going to start by looking at my whole squares. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I'm going to write that off to the side. I have 10 whole squares. Now my little pieces of squares, they are in half-inch pieces. So how many halves make a whole? If you said 2, you are right. If I have 2 halves and I put them together, it makes a whole. Absolutely. So I'm going to separate it in groups of 2. So here's a group of 2. Here's a group of 2. Do I still have another group of 2? No. So since I don't have a group of 2, that piece is 1/2. So going just by this top row, because remember, I already did all of these and I counted them off to the side. I already counted them over here. And going by the top row, I have 1 whole piece, 2 whole pieces, and a half. So 10 plus 2 and a half. That's 10 plus 2. Now add your half. 12 and a half should be your answer. Use the picture to help you. All right, same thing here. Count your holes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So I have 12 holes. And now these are all done. Now the next one says they're in thirds, 1/3 piece. So how many thirds make a hole? If you said 3/3, you're right. 1/3, 2/3, 3/3. 3/3 makes a hole. So now I need a group of 3. 1/3, 2/3, 3/3. Oh, so that's 1 hole. Do I have any extras? No. So I'm going to add 1. 12 plus 1 is 13. There are 13 square meters there. So you're going to do this for the next 2 problems. These are also part of your assignment for the day. My suggestion, you all have a math workbook. Go ahead and draw the pictures. If it gives you the lines, use it to help you. If it gives you the lines, use it to help you. Now, here's a hint. Here's a hint. This one and this one are part of your assignment today. They will have a fraction left over. They will have a fraction. Number 5, it says, what is the area of this rectangle with the sides? Each of the squares is 1 unit long. All right, so I need to find my area. Each square is a unit long, so you need to count how many units you do to go up and how many over. So if they're each 1 unit long, that's what you're going to count. Then you're going to think about the same picture in a different way. Now you have to rethink about it. Instead of being 1 unit, they're 1/3 units. So that means you need to figure out how many 1/3 units you have. Okay, this is a bonus question. If you get part B correct and you can show me your thinking, take a picture of your work if you need to, type it out for me. If you get part B correct, then you're going to get 1 free day of not having to do extra math. But you need to give me your details. Deal? Great. And finally, your math boxes for today. This is what it's going to look like. So box A has a volume of 152 beans. If B has a greater volume, which one could be the answer? So you need to know what the word greater means. Greater doesn't mean it's better. Oh, you're so great. Nope, not in math. You should know what greater means in math. Greater means bigger. Number 2, what is the area of the rectangle? Here's my hint. You guys have this math book? Draw your picture just like you did on the page before and do the math. Number 3, which expressions are all less than 16 minus 8? We are going to do this one together. Again, you watch my video, we do this together, you have right answers. Number 4, complete conversion. So 1 hour equals how many minutes? 3.5 hours equals how many minutes? 3/4 of an hour equals how many minutes? And then 240 minutes equals how many hours? Got to do math, guys. Before you do this, you should know, and I will give you part A, 1 hour is 60 minutes. We're going to go back to number 3 really quickly, and I'm sorry I jumped ahead. I should have just done this while I was doing it. So I need to find numbers that are less than 16 minus 8. So if I do that number, multiply by 2, multiply means more. Subtract 2, less. Divided by 2, less. Add 2, it's going to be more. So your answer for number 3 should be B and C. Number 5, write an expression for each statement. Add 12 and 8 and multiply the sum by 3. So because I'm multiplying the sum by 3, that means I need to add first. In order to show me that you're adding first, you have to put parentheses. 12 plus 8 times 3. Now, this next one is tricky because sometimes it's going to do this and it's going to confuse you and it's going to be tricky because it's going to say it backwards. So you really have to think about what it says. It says, subtract 10 from the product of 6 and 8. Can I subtract it if I don't know the product yet? No. So I'm going to have to find the product first. If you remember back to our first lesson, product means multiply. So I'm going to do 6 times 8. And then I'm going to subtract 10. It did not say solve, so you do not have to find the answer. All right. This is what an expression looks like. It might have parentheses. It's adding, subtracting. It doesn't have to have an answer. An expression means show me what you're supposed to do. Okay, so for number 6, it says, write an expression that shows how many fish are female. So again, you're going to write an expression. So underline that so you remember. All right, your keyword for today is going to be spaghetti. Spaghetti. And I'm going to write it down on my paper so you know. And I'm going to have it on there. Keyword, S-P-A-G-H-E-T-T-I, spaghetti. So you will have a box on your quiz for your on your math boxes page that says what is the keyword for today, and you're going to write the word spaghetti. I know it's weird. Must be hungry. All right, guys, have a great day. I hope to see you soon. Don't forget to check back for some videos that I'm doing on things that you guys had questions on. Okay? Thanks, guys.